I do want to talk to you about rejection, Liz. You had a friend, am I right, who had written a blog post about this kind of, was it like a no thank you
Yeah,
challenge?
she called it a no thank you challenge, which is
Which
so
is really
like polite. Yeah, so nice. Yeah.
And so what made you think, however long later, that you wanted to kind of take this on yourself?
So it's Katie Chappell. She's an illustrator, and she wrote this blog post, and she'd done it, quite a few years before me. And I think, there's quite a lot of people. There's actually a really good TED talk. I'll try and find it and send it to you. But there's like a TED talk about the kind of concept. But what happened was I got a rejection. So I was at a conference. I asked this really well-known guy to be on my podcast on a whim in Instagram DMs, and he basically was like, "How many downloads do you get?" And I told him this was like early days of my podcast, so within the first year, and he was like, "Yeah, I'm looking for sort of a bigger audience." And, this guy, he's got like 1 million Instagram followers. So, of course, he's going to be strategic about what opportunities he takes and which ones he doesn't. But what the sort of turning point for me was a couple of months later. I was thinking about someone who I wanted to invite to be on my podcast. And I remember having the thought process of, oh, I'm not going to do that, because that didn't feel good when his name's Chris, when Chris said no to being on my podcast. And I suddenly had this kind of realization that my fear of feeling that again was holding me back from doing what I wanted to do in my business and with my podcast. And so then I remembered this blog post that Katie had written, and I decided to set myself this challenge to get 100 rejections. And what was really cool about it is that the mindset shift was instant. So I had taken something that was difficult and turned it into a win-win situation. And all of a sudden, it just became like really fun and exciting. And it was like, okay, well, what am I going to pitch for? Like it really turned it round. And like one of the things I always say is it's not like I'm cured from feeling negative emotions about rejection. And that was never the goal. Like I still feel disappointed. But the huge thing for me is that I recover so much quicker. I don't let it mean something that it shouldn't mean, or, I can stop myself from spiraling in that direction much quicker now. And also, it's just really inspired me to go for opportunities that I probably would never have gone for before. And it's gained momentum. Like, I think it gave me a lot of confidence. And I think that then resulted in me getting loads of other opportunities, not things that I was pitching for, like people coming to me because I was just suddenly showing up in a really different, more confident way. And so, and I'm still like, I'm still trying to get the rejections. I'm still not very far into reaching my goal, but it's just been an amazing experience. And, obviously I made content about it, and then that's kind of snowballed, and I've had lots of people get in touch with me being like, I've done the same thing, or I pitched for this thing and they said yes, and I was never expecting it. So thanks for inspiring me to pitch for it. And, like really encouraging things. And I think, we talked about how the Adobe thing fitted in with the small business, stuff that I do. And I just think this fits in with it really nicely as well, as a way to like encourage and support small businesses. And, it all comes back to that kind of umbrella of like supporting small businesses with how they show up online and how they share their brands with the world. So it's been really fun, a really fun process.
I think I bought your rejection sticker chart maybe like 6 months ago. 6 months ago, maybe, yeah. And I pitched to go on a podcast, and this was a photography podcast for photographers. And I'd never been on a podcast before, and I was absolutely terrified to pitch. And then the morning of the recording, I bought this microphone for that because, all the gear and no idea. And I literally I blocked out nothing for the whole, it was like at 11:30. I did nothing the whole morning except test it.
Oh, nice.
And I was doing little test Zoom calls with my partner upstairs to make sure it's working. The anxiety, honestly, it was on a whole level. It was very intense. And probably there was so much electricity running through my body by the time we actually logged on. And I did it. It came out sort of 4 or 5 weeks later, and I absolutely loved it. And I was nervous to hear the final edit, the episode come out, And I actually was really, I'm going to say like impressed by myself, but I was surprised that I actually sounded like I knew my shit, like I knew what I was talking about, which I shouldn't be surprised because I've been a photographer for 16 years. But I just have so much imposter syndrome around talking to other photographers about photography. And I think that's a thing in like a creative world that we often have.
Yeah.
You know, we'll talk to lay people about it, but like it's just very competitive in its kind of culture. So I then was like completely addicted. And after that came out, I was like, right, I'm going to start a podcast. And 7 weeks later, I started a podcast. And I wouldn't have done any of that. And now you're on it, which is so weird, actually, isn't it? It's a nice little full circle for me. Obviously, you were not aware of any of this story, but it's very cool because I wouldn't have perhaps pitched to that podcast as a photographer had I not heard about you doing this challenge. And I'm just one person, you know, there are ripples everywhere when we do this stuff. And it's, you know, we have an idea and we think it will be helpful for somebody. And this is the beauty of content creation. We talk about it and it actually is helpful. And you don't know where those ripples are going and how they are impacting people's lives. And I just think the chart is so good. My least favorite thing is when you get like a no, not right now. Because I'm like, no, there's no closure for me here. I need the sticker or I need a yes.
Yeah.
Like,
don't give me your ambiguous. Okay, back to me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Check back in 3 months. And I'm like, no.
Where do I put that?
Yeah. You don't understand. I've got this chart. I need to.
I need you to say no. Yeah.
But it's crazy, the psychological impact of it.